Hello everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Transfer Show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening slash early morning. Um, there's been some breaking news today, so therefore we are doing an impromptu show. So apologies for doing it very late today, but some discussions have to be done before we speak about Isak, which is on my screen right now. We have to speak about Luis Diaz. Now, the breaking news today, of course, I'm sure everyone has seen it on social media, is that Bayern Munich have agreed a deal for Luis Diaz. Now, a couple of days ago, I thought, their valuation was quite low. They placed a bid of around £58 million, which for me was not good enough. And Liverpool definitely thought that it was the same approach as well. But now we've heard that the fee is believed to be around 75 million euros, which is close to 65 million. So my thoughts on the deal, not quite what we wanted. I think we were aiming or hoping to get around 70 million plus due to interest from other clubs, i.e., from your Barcelonas and also interest from Saudi Arabia, with Al Nassr being one of the strongest suitors there. But it looks like Liverpool have come to some sort of compromise and have decided that maybe 65 million is good enough for us at this minute. So for me, in terms of the player leaving, it's definitely a shame because he's a player that I think was really good for us last season. Maybe over the course of his Liverpool career, he hasn't hit the heights or he hasn't lived up to the reputation. But I always feel like it was a difficult job for him because he came into the club to replace Sadio Mane, who of course is a legend. I don't really throw that word out there, but he was a legend. So to fill his boots, it was always going to be a difficult task. But I feel like over the years he showed great promise, especially when he first joined the club. The first 6 months he was fantastic. He was explosive when he was signed from January. And unfortunately, the following season he picked up an injury, and that, of course, stopped his development, or should I say, progress within the team. And that's probably one of the reasons why he never got a new contract. And this is the reason why he ended up leaving Liverpool, not because he's not happy with the team or the city or where Liverpool are in terms of the table or in Europe or whatnot. It's not down to Liverpool not performing. It's because from a personal point of view, he's not satisfied with the financial package that he's receiving. Which I get it because he's earning roughly 55,000 a week, and you've got squad players that are earning a lot more than him. So I understand his position there, where he doesn't feel like he's getting his true value, and therefore he's looked at his current options. And his desire would have been to move over to Barcelona, but they have, signed Marcus Rashford, which came out of the blue. I think everyone expected them to have gone for Nico Williams, but they've signed Marcus Rashford on loan for the year, and therefore they were no longer in need of a target for that left wing. So right now, it looks like he's heading over to Bundesliga, not the dream club that him or his dad, would have wanted for at this stage of Luis Diaz's career. But it's still a good move. It's a move where he'll be earning a lot of money. I think the reported sort of agreement is that he'll earn around 230k a week, which is of course a lot higher than what he was earning at Liverpool. 170 odds on top of that. And then plus he's playing for a very strong team, a team that is normally favourites to win the domestic league. They're also one of the teams that are challenging for the Champions League title year in, year out. So it's not sometimes I look at it as a sort of sideways move because he didn't really get his move to Barcelona. I still think this is a good move for him, especially with the fact that he wasn't really sprung on moving over to Saudi Arabia. I don't think it was his sort of in his mind frame to move over to that part of the world only because he's 28, 29. He's still hitting his prime years. He's within his prime right now. So for him, it would probably be regarded as a bit of a waste to move over there where when you have interest to remain in Europe. So I feel like that was probably his angle. So yeah, I get from his point of view, I'm not going to be hypocritical and say, "Oh, why did he leave us?" It's all about the money. But you got to look at his own personal situation, and I totally understand. Um, from Liverpool point of view, he's 28, 29 to get 65 million pounds at that age. It's a good deal. If I'm being honest, he's the third most expensive sale that Liverpool made behind Coutinho and Luis Suarez. So that goes to show, we got a good return from him. We paid around 35, 40 million pounds for him a few years ago. So pretty much, just under doubled that tally there. So for me, it's not an ideal, departure. I would have liked him to have stayed 'cause I feel like it just strengthens our position going forward due to the impact he had last season and the fact that he can play left wing and up top very easily. But I wish him the best. I don't think we should have any sort of grudges towards him. There was some sections of the fan base that weren't really pleased with Diaz over the years, and despite having a good season, still had quite a lot of criticism to present for him. But I've always thought, he's a good player, electric on the field, gives his all. He's always committed, always does his best. And I never feel like he was a player that shied away from hard work or putting in a graft during the game. Definitely helped out, with the left back, whether it's Robertson or Simicast over the years. And I always feel like he was dynamic at times. He was probably the bright spark on our team where he was trying to go behind the defense of the opposition and trying to make things happen. So I wish him the best. I don't really have any sort of hard feelings about it. And I understand the situation in terms of why decided to move on. So the big question is from a Liverpool point of view, what's our next step? Because he's a left winger by trade. But are we going to sign a like for like replacement in terms of another left winger, or are we going to go a little bit different and try and sign an attacker? Someone that has 4 letters in their names, who knows? But, we'll speak about that very shortly, but I've got a few comments, before we move on. First comment is, from Ozan Kawat. Big ups to Ozan Kawat. Says, "Yep, Ozzy, knew this was coming." Yeah, we've spoken about this quite a few times. We always thought that it was bound to happen at some point, and he said he was pushing to move. Yeah, and that's one thing that, I didn't really sort of like about that is that he had a press conference not so long ago, probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where he was on international duty for Colombia, and he pretty much said it out loud that he's been in discussions with other clubs. Now, that's not something you really reveal to the world. So for me, it's one of those things where you keep that within yourself. Generally, you don't speak to clubs behind closed doors. You've got to let the club officially, make the approach, and then you have a discussion from there onwards. But it doesn't look like that's the case. So for me, yeah, I didn't like the way he kind of moved about that. But I understand it. It could have been worse. He could have, faked a back injury and submitted a transfer request, then that would have, gone the wrong way, in my opinion. But some fans still weren't pleased with those comments he made. And of course, his dad's, twerking for Barcelona for a couple of years now didn't really help. So yeah, I think it's just one of those things where we have to be human. We have to understand the situation and then kind of take it from there. Just got a comment here from Fahim who says, "Yo, big up Fahim. Thank you for your comment." All I can say, man needs to learn German now. Innit? Yeah, I don't think he learned English that well because, as in, he'll do a bit of like social media and it's very much broken English. But yeah, German's gonna be another trick for him. So we'll see how he does. But he says, "Do you read the chat, bro?" I do, but I have to just speak about the first rumor in more detail, and then I let the I'll naturally, go through the chat and then read the comments out loud. So yeah, I do read the chat. And I was like, come back, said, let him do it one long person. Yeah, let me just, let me have my 2 pence and then we'll move on. I'll let you guys contribute as well. So yeah, big up yourself for commenting. Now let's move on to the next topic. So Alexander Isak. Now, a lot of fans probably going to refer to rival fans more so than Liverpool fans have said very publicly, "Oh, Liverpool can't get Isak. They need to raise the funds and all that sort of stuff." Well, looks like the funds are coming through the bank right now because we've just made a sale or on the verge of making a sale for Luis Díaz. So now that could speed up the process of trying to sign Alexander Isak. Now the report is that we are reportedly on the verge of placing a bid of around 130 million plus add-ons. that I think equal up to 140 million in total. So, firstly, what do you guys make of that deal? Is that a bit too high? In my opinion, I don't really care about the money as long as we get Isak, because I feel like the club have shown their hand where they want to sign the player. They know that this is the number one target. So for us to sign our number one target, that is something we have to really focus. And when you've got a target like that and it's been publicly known, you will have to put all your efforts to try and make that deal happen. Now, at first, Liverpool did the right thing. They made the approach and tried to get some sort of indication if Newcastle were willing to do business. When we made that approach, they never really gave us a clear answer. They never said yes. They never said no. They kind of left us hanging. And because of that, Liverpool moved on and went for another target in Hugo Ekitike, who, of course, was Newcastle's prime target. And because of that, we've actually ended up signing him. But now it's like Liverpool must be out of the race. They're not in for another striker. But I feel like that could be a different case because Hugo Ekitike is one of those players where he can play on the left side. I don't think it's his favorite position or it's a role that, I think he'll be fully explosive in. But having said that, if we set the team, tactically where he's not a winger, he's playing more as a left-sided forward and comes more infield, then it could work. Because then you've got the likes of Verts, you've got Isak as well in this mix where they can interchange and really cause havoc up top. So that's the key there, having a team that's dynamic but also unpredictable to the opposition. If we just bought a left winger like for Diaz, then people might know, what Liverpool are trying to present in sort of their lineups and how we're going to set up tactically. So that's something we have to give credit to the coach, where he's signing players that aren't hugely predictable in terms of how we play. Even if you look at Kirkes, everyone thinks Kirkes is a fullback that is just going to go on an overlap. He's actually the opposite. He loves to underlap. He loves to attack infield. If you watch the game against AC Milan, he was pretty much close to the edge of the box rather than out wide. Of course, there was times when Gakpo had the ball, then it will shift his focus and then overtake him and then go through the byline. But that's generally how he sets up. And Frimpong, he attacks that byline, you know, in a very aggressive manner, whether it's playing left wing, right wing, right midfield, or right back, he plays the same way. So Liverpool definitely have, different dynamics in terms of how we play, and you know, it's going to be very, very interesting. And we thought maybe if up top, all we need is a gunman, and that should seal the deal for us. But right now, maybe Arne Slot has completely different ideas. He has different options off the bench, and unfortunately, due to the tragic passing of Diogo Jota, we've had to think maybe a year ahead, which is probably why we end up signing Hugo Ekitike earlier than planned. So for me, Isak is the dream signing, still is the dream signing, and I'm hoping we can get it done. Right now, it looks like the ball's in our court, but I'm also hearing, from other sources that Liverpool need encouragement from Newcastle that they're willing to talk. So that's, threw me off a little bit, but I feel like Liverpool just need to place a bid. They need to place a bid that they believe is going to be a sufficient amount to get the deal over the line. I actually feel like we shouldn't bid too high. I think we should probably bid around 120 million and just work from there on, because whatever we offer, they're not going to accept. If we offer 150 million, which is kind of the ball mark that they presented, then they might milk us and try and get 160. It's just the way they're going to negotiate. So let's see what happens in terms of Isak. I've said it for a few days, a couple of weeks now, even more. I've been saying it for quite a while. I'm confident that we'll get this deal done. Whether it happens next week or anything like that, I can't really give a sort of a time frame in regards to that. but I just have this feeling that Isak will be a Liverpool player this summer. So let me know in the chat what you think. If you think we are going to get Isak, and if so, how much do you think we should bid to get the player? Because every player's got a price. But I always feel like, when you really want something and you have a budget, you always surpass that budget a little bit just to get the thing that you want. So that might be the case for Liverpool. We might just, check the bank balance and just add a few more M's and try and get that deal over the line. So let's see what happens. But I'm confident we will get some developments in the coming days. So yeah, fingers crossed, we can make it happen. Um, just gonna go through some of the comments before we move on to the next topic. Fahim said, "Is this channel new?" No, it's not a new channel. I've been around for some time now. But if this is new for you, big up yourself for tuning in and for commenting as well. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Brazy, big up Brazy says, "This Fabrizio guy has been saying the same thing about Isak for the past 5 days." And then his second comment is, "Just say, here we go, FFS." That's how he's trying to make his money. Because obviously with Twitter now, or X as it's known, you get the more engagement they get, the more money you make. So for him, it's like recycling the same message multiple times, and he's still getting the retweets, the likes, and the shares, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's just his way of making money until he gets a further development. But right now, I feel we're just waiting for Newcastle to offer us any sort of indication that they want to do business, because they definitely need the money. They're not able to sign players right now. They're, of course, in terms of their financial situation, they have to sell in order to acquire more players. They've made bids for the likes of João Pedro, Safford, but it looks like he's off to Man City. So they've made bids for a number of players, Ekatike, but of course we took him away from them. Um, Wissa, but I don't know what's happening with the Wissa deal. And Bremo, he ended up rejecting them. So the list goes on and on. And it might be because they weren't able to offer more money from a financial point of view for the player in terms of their salary and all that sort of stuff, or maybe they made a bid and it just didn't meet the club's valuation. So if they had the finances, then they could have made those deals very quickly and they could have had a stronger squad right now. But at the minute, they're struggling to sign new players and they desperately need new additions to the squad. They don't really have a big squad right now, and they'll be competing in all competitions, including the Champions League. So if you're not having at least 25 players in your squad, it's going to be very difficult to compete in all cylinders. So they need some recruitment for sure. And if it means they have to sell their star striker and use that money to sign 3, 4 players, then it has to be done. And from a financial fair play point of view as well, it helps their profit margins and all that sort of stuff for the next few years. So they won't have to worry about selling every year. It has been an issue for last year. They've had to sell to kind of balance the books. If they sell Isak, they pretty much saw it then. Hopefully, with success, if they're able to win another trophy next season, that can change for them as well. So let's say the ball's in their court now. I think from a Liverpool point of view, we're ready. We've got the wallet out. We're just waiting to place that card on the table or the briefcase with the cash and say, take our money, because we're ready. We're ready to make that bid. We've been ready for a few weeks now. It's just that they've been a bit coy, a bit, cheeky in terms of not giving us a clear answer or not telling us if they're willing to do business or not. So hopefully, we'll get some further developments. I'm positive that we'll hear something next week. Today felt like a bomber, in terms of Diaz, moving over, and it kind of just aligned with what's happening. It's kind of a bit of a domino effect where one player is leaving, so we have to find a replacement. And Isak might not be a direct replacement for Luis Diaz, but he's pretty much, in terms of being another attacker, ticks the box. So let's see what happens going forward. Drunk Vigo said 120 million pounds max. Fair enough. I would push the purse strings a bit more if I'm being honest with you. I'm at that stage where we're on the table now, so we're dealing with them in terms of like, I don't gamble, but in terms of if you're playing blackjack or whatnot, if you're on the table, you've got to try and secure the bag and then take it from there. So right now, Liverpool are on the table. We're trying to secure the bag. We're trying to secure the player that I think most of us fans dream of having in our team. I know some fans had other alternative targets, the likes of Julian Alvarez and Osimhen, maybe. I think some fans wanted him as well. I like all of the strikers, but for me, we should try and do our best to get the deal done. I wouldn't pay, upwards of 140, 150. I feel like that's a bit high. I'm not gonna lie to you, but let's see what happens. But I'm sure we'll get some updates soon. Newcastle has zero leverage. If you speak to Newcastle fans, they'll tell you that they've been playing 4D chess with us. So it depends who you talk to. But no, I would say from a neutral point of view, I don't think Liverpool have been played or anything like that. And it looks like we're the front runners. I think the only competitor we had or any rival to signing Isak was Al Hilal. But from what I've heard in terms of other sources, they've indicated that Isak doesn't want to go to Saudi right now. He's pretty much shooing to stay in the Premier League. But when they say stay in the Premier League, it's for Liverpool. You look at all the other clubs. Arsenal have just signed Eucharist, and I'm sure everyone's seen, AFTV celebrational videos, all that stuff. So they're over the moon about signing him. You've got Chelsea who signed João Pedro, and I'm not going to lie, he looks like a very good fit for that team. Manchester United, they're in for the market. Some of their fans have been vocal to say, they should try and get that done. I saw something that was a bit funny earlier on where there was a GoFundMe page to try and get Isak through the door. I don't think that's a realistic option. I don't see him going from Newcastle to United. Obviously, in terms of stature, United, of course, one of the biggest clubs in world football, but they haven't been on the pitch. So that's the key there. If you're not performing and winning on the pitch, why move to a club like that? And that's just my opinion. That's not because Man United. I'm like very surprised the likes of Mbeumo and Cunha went over there, but we only know the reason why they went there. The money was long when they came to contract talk. So that's just how it goes. But you're right in terms of there's no real rival, and it looks like Isak has communicated to Newcastle and said Liverpool is the club that he wants to join. So let's see. Newcastle are going to do their best to hold on to their star striker. You've got Gabby Logan and Alan Shearer making emotional pleas online to to make him stay and all that sort of stuff. Quite embarrassing, but that's just how it goes, I guess. Sometimes desperation, if you ask me. Steve Mania, he says Isak with fingers crossed emojis. Be on yourself, Steve Mania. Thank you for your comment there. Um, and then we've got Ozan saying, hope it's next week by Thursday or Friday, Ozzy. I hope so. Us Liverpool fans have been itching for this move to move on. The ball's not rolling right now. We're just hoping, things happen. And hopefully, we'll get some development very, very soon. Asim from Born and Red, big up yourself. Asim, he says, I think that's the Sweden emoji there with soon. Yeah, soon come, most definitely. And I was saying, big up to Asim. Big up to Asim. Thank you for your comment. Thank you, Ozan Kabak, as always. John Vigo said, why we have no competitors? Everyone's Isak wants to go Liverpool only. That's fair. But I feel like Newcastle, because of that, they're gonna use it to their advantage and try and hold on to a player. But I do feel like because of his recent stance where he hasn't trained with the squad, he didn't fly with the squad over to Singapore. It's quite clear he's unsettled. So it should help us in terms of the negotiations, but they will do their utmost to try and hold on to their life and get the best deal possible. I think the deal, if I was to make a prediction, I think it'll be around 130 in total. So I'd say like 120 mil plus add-ons that equals to 130. I think that will be the deal that will be the conclusion. Anything higher than that, I feel like it would be a bit too high, but I've gone too far in saying I want this guy, at all costs. So we'll see what happens. But I think that would be the sort of ball mark in terms of what ends up happening if we get this deal done over the line. John Vigo says Newcastle would have got 150 million pounds if they agreed to sell 2 weeks ago. Facts. I think we're willing to. give them a blank checkbook at one point. But yeah, they've been a bit cheeky, but that's just what I feel. Newcastle's weak now. Uh, I'm glad you aren't negotiating on behalf of Liverpool. Well, that's your opinion. So we'll see in terms of what happens. But if Liverpool do get the deal done, and it's around the same sort of ballpark figure that I mentioned, please make sure to come back on the show. Now, moving on, and not pleasantly, but I have to still speak about it because a lot of fans want the club to sign this player in Anthony Gordon as his. When I say his, I'm referring to Luis Diaz, like for like replacement. Now, if you've watched my channel before, you'll know my views about Anthony Gordon. For me, he's not the player that I want to see at Liverpool Football Club. Nothing personal, no agenda, nothing like that. I just don't feel like he's at the level that Liverpool should be sort of pursuing at this stage. I think we've got players like Gakpo in the team who's going to solidify that position. And I feel like, if Isak was to come through, then Ekitike might be playing more on that left hand side um, in the course of next season. So, but some will argue and say, well, why not sign Anthony Gordon? He can be the backup for Cody Gakpo. On paper, I don't mind that. That doesn't sound like a crazy scenario. But now we're going to have to pay around 80 million for backup. So I would rather Liverpool target another profile where maybe it's a young and up and coming left winger like a Malik Fofana, but looks like he might be moving to Merseyside, but not the rest side. He's moving over to the blue side in Everton. So that would have been an ideal profile, someone that would have been low cost and not a huge investment at this stage. So for me, it's very, very interesting to know what Liverpool do. I don't think this will be the target that we go for. I think all our eggs are in one basket for Alexander Isak. I mean, that's the one we want, and then we'll take it from there. Hopefully, Liverpool can address a few other positions before the window closes. Because I feel like we were dressed with real quality players, but for me, there's some areas that still need addressing. But hopefully, we can get the Isak deal over the line. I think that would be a great sort of marquee sign, a big statement as well. I feel like that's going to present shivers down a lot of people, and I feel like it's going to be a fear factor that we need in our team. In terms of Anthony Gordon, if the valuation was to drop and it's around 50 million, then I'd say I'd consider it. Anything higher, I don't think he's worth the price. But that's just my opinion. Kieran, big up Kieran says hello, hello. Big up Kieran, appreciate you coming on. And going to come back saying hello to him as well. So big up, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Now, next rumor, which slightly surprised me actually when I saw this, and this was regarding Mark Guehi. Now, we've been linked to him for 2, 3 weeks now, and it appeared that maybe a deal was agreed privately behind the scenes with the club, or there's been very strong discussions. But as it stands, it seems that Liverpool have called their interest in signing Mark Guehi. Um, and the reason being is because Crystal Palace value him at around £45 million, despite having only 1 year remaining in his contract. And it's no secret, Liverpool like Mark Guehi, but unlikely to be drawn into any sort of transfer saga involving a defender. So I'm a little bit surprised by this. I thought Liverpool would have done all they could to try and get him over the line. I think 45 million, yeah, it's a little bit high. Don't get me wrong, but you have to look at the defender that's coming through. I feel like he would be the perfect addition to our squad. He's not going to be first or second choice. He'll be third choice, but he'll be a player in rotation for Konate and Van Dijk. And he's Premier League proven. He's around 24 years of age. One of the first names on the England team sheet. I don't really follow England like that, but it's still a bonus in that regards. And he's a player that's multifunctional. He can play in the back three, he can play in the back four, both footed as well. There was a point where for years I thought Guehi was left footed, but he's not. He's actually right footed, but he's very good on his left foot. And for me, his experience and he's clearly got leadership. He's been a captain for some time now. So for me, he would have been a perfect addition to us. Like 45 million is not that crazy in this day and age and this current climate of the transfer market. So I'm surprised that we've called our interest right now. Maybe this is some Richard Hughes ploy to pretend like we're not interested, but then we'll come return him with another bid. Um, and also the reason why I'm a little bit surprised is because we just found out that Joe Gomez picked up a slight small injury over the weekend. But there's no sort of secret in regards to Joe Gomez. He's had a lot of injuries over the years, so he's not a player that we can heavily rely on when it comes to team selection. So therefore, I've said it quite a few times. I feel like Joe Gomez on paper should be listed as fifth choice centre back. So you would have had Van Dijk, Konate, and in my sort of scenario, a Guehi, and then another centre back, possibly like a Hato, that would have been a perfect addition to the squad, would have added a different balance to our team, and then have Joe Gomez as the fifth choice on paper. And that way, you've got in if you've got any injuries, then Joe Gomez can come in, whether it's an issue at centre back, but also fullbacks. He can cover both of those roles very, very easily as well. So I don't know, it's a bit of a tricky one. The big question is who do we move on to in terms of our target? If it's not Mark Gay, who else is it going to be? Because Mark Gay ticks a lot of boxes, and I even forgot to mention he's homegrown. So that's a call we have to still keep one eye on because we don't have that many homegrown players within the squad. I know you can register a little number, and then therefore your non-homegrown players, it will have to be a certain number as well. But it's still worth and it's still wise to add homegrown players for the long term as well. So I'm not too sure. Let me know in the chat who you would target as an alternative. Could Liverpool be cheeky and go for Osman Diomande, who's a target for Crystal Palace? Because they've identified him as Mark Gay's replacement, but I've actually identified him as someone that I really like to see at Liverpool because he has very similar traits to Konate, very big, very strong, very aggressive in the tackle, dominant in the air, has good ball playing ability as well. So for me, he would have been a good addition to the squad, someone that was very similar in terms of style for Konate. Planté is someone we'll speak about very shortly as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting one. Ozan Kabak, he says Osman Diomande. He's only 21. Is he 21? I thought he was a little bit older. If that's the case, even better. Um, yeah, you're right. He's 21 years of age. He'll be 22 in December. So for me, mm, I'd go for him. And I know that might not be ethical to some people, but it is what it is. This is this is how football works sometimes. So I'd go for Osman Diomande. I think if we can't get Gay, then go for him. Of course, it doesn't help in terms of a homegrown quota, but then we'll have to find another solution for that. But yeah, let's see what happens. I'm hoping you know, this isn't the closed chapter in regards to our chase for Mark Gay. Hopefully, Liverpool can sort of rekindle their interest once again, and hopefully we'll get further development. But I was pretty much, in my mind thinking he's a shoe-in. Like he's definitely going to be a Liverpool player this summer. But in this case, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So we'll see, who Liverpool will target in the end. Kieran says, what happened with Diomande to Crystal Palace? Haven't heard about it for a while. So they've been in negotiations with him for quite some time, and the reports that I had that they're very close to agreeing a deal. But I have a feeling it has to do with Mark Gay, if he stays at the club or not, because their stance was quite different a few days ago. They were welcoming bids for Mark Guehi. I think they prefer to sell him now rather than lose him on a free transfer. So with the money that would have been recouped, they will spend it on Diamande. And ironically, the fee that they are close to agreeing is around 45 million, which is why they're, asking other clubs, if they want Mark Guehi, they have to place that bid. And because I feel like the player's head has been turned and he wants to move to Liverpool, that's become a stumbling block now because there's other interest from Tottenham. From what I remember, I don't know other clubs. They might be Chelsea as well because they're in the market for a centre back. But Liverpool are the ones that I think he really, he wants to join. of course, due to being a champion. But of course, we've got a very exciting prospect as well. So it's going to be interesting in terms of how this unfolds because right now, Mark Guehi thought he was going to be a Liverpool player, but it doesn't like it's going to be the case. But also from a Crystal Palace point of view, maybe Diomande doesn't end up going there. So let's see. Tables might turn, and we end up getting Diomande, and they end up having Gay for another season, and then lose him on a free transfer. They have to make that decision. Uh, Try not to play 4D chess like Newcastle did because it might end up burning you as well. So let's see. I'm hoping we'll get some development because I feel like Mark Gay would have been a fantastic addition to our squad. So only time will tell what happens in regards to the Crystal Palace defender. And let's speak about current affairs as well. So this for me, same old rumor, just a different day. Um, and some of these outlets haven't changed their tune. It's the same old story, and they're reporting that Real Madrid are close to agreeing some sort of deal with Canate in regards to joining them next summer on a free transfer. And my stance hasn't changed as well. If Liverpool feel like he's not going to sign a new contract, this is the time to sell him on. And I feel like it might impact our success next season, but I don't want another Trent saga. I don't want it to be where we've got a player playing for the club and then every month it's is he staying, is he not staying? I don't want that kind of scenario. I want it to be where we know where we stand as a fan base and we know the player's committed to the cause, i.e. signing a new contract. So right now it's very unclear, it's very mixed feelings for me because one day we're hearing Konate's been offered a contract and that's his priority, and then the next day you're hearing Real Madrid have been speaking to him, and he's given his word that he wants to join them next summer. So only time will tell in terms of what happens with Konate. I really hope he stays because I rate him as one of the best centre backs in Europe right now, and I feel like he could become one of the best for years and years. But it's not sort of positive in terms of where we are with Konate. We're not hearing much developments. It's been quiet on his side, so only time will tell. But hopefully, um, we get some clarification by the end of the window. If not, then I feel like it's going to be a difficult season. And mentally, I would probably think that he's deciding to leave. And that's going to suck because to lose him on a free, like we did with Trent, not the most ideal situation. But Liverpool have shown over the years that they've moved on from selling big players, so Liverpool have to do it again. But in an ideal world, you don't want to lose your best players or one of your best players in the team and go again and try and find an adequate replacement. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we'll get some news in the coming weeks. Couple of rumors circling today, and that's in regards to a young striker called Idrissa Gueye. Now, apparently, Liverpool have made an inquiry for the Mets striker, who is valued at £17 million. My thoughts on the player, I'm not going to say I'm a big fan. I've been watching him for months or years, nothing to that nature. I watched a couple of compilations today. He looks decent, very tall in stature. Um, okay, first touch. I'm not gonna say he's got a great first touch. There's been times where it's looked a bit heavy. Decent finisher, good with his headering. Um, Otherwise, decent striker at his age, but I don't think he's ready for a move to Liverpool. If he's going to join Liverpool, he'll be part of the first team squad. I don't think he's quite ready for that level. I think the best thing for him is to continue his trade at Metz, play in Liga, and then continue to grow. And then once he's like 20, 21 years of age, then he can start moving or think about moving to another club. If you're going to join another club, you have to be guaranteed, first team football, and that's not what Liverpool will offer him at all. So for me, decent player, in terms of potential, but I don't think he's Liverpool quality or too early at his sort of development to move over to a big club like Liverpool. He has been linked to a move to Manchester United, funny enough, um, but that doesn't really say much in terms of who they're trying to target because Man United too much signed, whoever they want, but not for the right reasons. It's more name or potential And unfortunately, some of those players with huge potential end up failing, and their careers get affected by it as well. So being linked to Man United is not the best case scenario for any young player. But I don't feel like a move to Liverpool is on the cards. And the final rumor of today is Will Wright. Now, a few days ago, it was reported that Liverpool were no longer in the race to sign the highly rated striker, but um, that seems to have changed right now. It appeared at one point that Arsenal were favourites for his signature, but today we've heard that Liverpool have had a bid accepted for Will Wright. Um, my thoughts on the deal or the striker. I've not heard what the financial deal is. I've just heard that we've got a bid accepted. Um, I've seen a compilations of him. He looks decent. He's got a good first touch. Very good on the turn. Decent finisher. I wouldn't say he's a great finisher. When I was watching the compilation, there was some shots where I feel like the keeper, if he was of better quality, would have definitely saved it. But still has a good technique in front of goal. So it could be one for the future. If he wants to join Liverpool, I don't think he'll be in the first team. He'll be within the under 18s or under 23s, and then he'll, buy his time to develop. And then if we feel like he's ready to move up, then he'll come into the first team squad. So good sort of potential. I'm not sure how Gary Neville feels about selling a player from Salford City to us, but he's a businessman, I guess, as well. So as long as we can match the price that he wants, he shouldn't be too displeased about it. So we'll see, what happens in regards to Will Wright. Uh, that's the last comment, but I've got one comment here from Mazzy. Big up Mazzy. He says, Ozzy, I'm late, a bit late to your show anyways. How do you feel we've sold our most dangerous player, Diaz? What happens next? No worries in terms of being late. To be fair, I started very late today than normal, but I appreciate you commenting. Appreciate you tuning in as well. Um, how do I feel about Liverpool selling Diaz, one of our dangerous players? A little bit sad, because I feel like he's one of our best attackers for us last season. But I understand his situation as well because Liverpool, their stance was quite clear. They weren't willing to offer him a new contract or better terms on his current one. And therefore, he had to think, what's my next move, from a career point of view, but also for his family. He's 28, 29. He's at that age where if he was to get a move or a new contract, whether it's at Liverpool or at another club, it has to be the best contract possible. Because after that, he's not going to get big long-term contracts. He's going to get 1 or 2 years, and it just becomes a bit of a cycle afterwards, especially when you're past 30, 32. So that's probably the main sort of thought that he had in terms of making his decision in terms of the next step. And I felt like there was interest from Barcelona. They weren't really willing to spend the cash on him. And Bayern Munich was probably the next best thing for him. Sadio was also available for him to move over there, and he would have earned, retirement money there. He could have been living like a king for years and years, but that wasn't his motive. He wanted to stay in Europe and compete at the highest level, and fair play to him. Um, He'll definitely be a rival for us, 'cause I feel like Bayern Munich are a team that will challenge for the Champions League next season. So yeah, a little bit disappointed he's leaving because I do rate him. I think he's a good player, but at the same time, I'm thinking from a business point of view, and even from his point of view. His point of view, he gets to move, he gets a pay rise in terms of 170K plus what he was currently earning, and then Liverpool get a 65 million for a player that's in his late 30s, and it's our third highest sale behind Coutinho and Luis Suarez. So that shows in terms of the magnitude of the departure. And maybe it was just, it was always the writing on the wall because he's expressed his frustration, whether it's through media outlets or indirect comments in press conferences. He's um, pretty much made his stance very clear that he wants to move on because he's not going to get a new contract. If Liverpool offered him a new contract, then he would pretty much, accept it. Because I feel like he's happy at the club, but he has to think about himself and his family. And yeah, that's the decision that he's made. So yeah, we'll see. What happens from a local point of view in terms of who we replace him with going forward. Mazzi said we absolutely need a gifted left winger to replace Diaz and Isak to replace Nunes. I would have thought Ekitike was the replacement for Nunes, and Diaz would have been the replacement for Isak. But obviously, Isak isn't a left winger, but I think you just have to swap the roles where Ekitike plays left-sided attack, and then you've got Isak up top. Or we can just be very direct and say, look, Isak and Ekitike as your two strikers, and then we sign a left winger. So the big question is, who would you want as a left winger if that was the angle that we're going with? Because one player I really like is Barcola. I don't know if he's available. Some fans like Anthony Gordon. I'm not on that boat. Rodrigo is very much the popular name because he's available for transfer. Um, I don't know what's happening with him. It's gone a bit quiet. So maybe because Liverpool were thinking it's going to be Rodrigo or Isak, and we decided to go with Isak right now. So only time will tell. Um, but yeah, let me know your thoughts in terms of who you'd want to replace Luis Diaz. Kieran says you might have spoken about it already, but have you seen that Rodrigo will make a decision on his future really soon at the end of his holiday? I wasn't completely aware of that, so that's news for me. Um, Hopefully his holiday ends soon, so we'll get some clarity. But if that's the case, it could be a target for us. It all comes down to what happens with Isak. If we get Isak and Rodrigo, I don't know where these new funds have come from because that sounds like FIFA career mode sort of stuff. You don't make those kind of moves in this day and age. We do actually have the finances to get that deal done. Um, I would love for that to happen. I really would, but I just don't know if it's a sort of realistic proposition. But Liverpool have surprises in this window. They've made us, dream again in terms of signing high-profile players like Florian Wirtz, and then with the additions of Perkes and Frimpong as well. So you never know; they might surprise us again. Um, Forgot to mention Ekitike. He's another player that could be a possibility. Uh, Roger Pentevio says the reason Diaz went because he'll get 10 million more. Who comes in now? 10 million more in terms of salary. Yeah, that is probably the case. Um, I think Isak comes in, and I don't know if we'll sign another left winger. I think the idea is that Gakpo will be the main left winger, and then we'll have Ekitike playing there at times as well. Um, might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I can see Verts playing left wing at times. I can see Szoboszlai playing there at times as well. So we have players that can, occupy that left wing role. And we've got a young kid in Rio and Gamoa who's, you know, making waves right now. I'm not saying he's going to be the backup or anything, but as the season goes on, maybe in the second half of the season, that's the way I'm predicting it. That's when he breaks into the team and pretty much, challenges for that role at some point. I think next season will be in terms of 2026 slash 2027. That will be his breakout season where he's in the squad, he's challenging for that left wing role, and Gakpo's got a big task at his hand. That's how I'm seeing it. That's how I'm envisioning it. So we'll see what happens if that is that's how it pans out. But you feel like we don't need to go all out with a new addition in terms of left wingers because I feel like Isak is the priority. I think that's the role where it'll be the difference maker in terms of what we do going forward. If it's Isak and Rodrigo, I am not one to complain. That would be the dream scenario. So let's see, um, if John Henry can help us with these dream signings. Acting like Sheikh Henry right now, just throwing money around everywhere. So let's see what happens. But yeah, we've got plenty of weeks remaining of the window. We're close to approaching the end of July. Another month, we'll get some clarity. I'm very much sure of that. Roger Painting, he says, if we don't get Guehi, who do you think we will get? Because we need a defender. 100% we need a defender. I would probably go on and say we need two because Joe Gomez isn't a reliable option, even though I really like him, I rate him as a player. the player that I'd go for, and I've been saying for a few months, is Diomande, and ironically, he's Crystal Palace's number one target. So let's shatter another dream. We shattered Newcastle's dream. We took hit their number one target, Hugo Ekitike. Let's go and do it to Crystal Palace and take their number one target. So we're acting like big bullies on the playground. Let it be. So if Guehi's not available for us, then we go and try and get Diomande because I feel like he's the one that would be a good addition to our squad. But I think the club should also look at another defender, just to add cover in that role because if another player comes in, we have technically four centre backs, but then the fourth choice centre back isn't always available. So I feel like that's a bit of a risky move going into next season, especially if we've strengthened in other areas and we're willing to challenge at all costs in terms of any title available. We're going to go for all of them next season. So for me, that's the key there, making sure we are fully equipped with a complete squad and going for all the titles next season. That's going to be the target, and hopefully, Liverpool will be winning some silverware at the end of the season. Curious if that is coming from Romano. That's big. That's big news there. So let's see how that news develops in terms of Rodrigo. I don't know when this holiday finishes. If it's in the next coming days, we'll find out soon. I don't think we'll know. I think when you hear that kind of news, my inkling is always that he's going to remain at his current club. That's just my feeling in regards to Rodrigo because there isn't any other noise in regards to another club, signing him. So maybe he's spoken to him and got assurances that he'll get some game time. And I feel like it takes a lot for a player to leave Real Madrid and join another club. So maybe he's thinking, I'll give it one more crack at it and then see what happens. If I was Rodrigo, I think if you're able to maneuver a transfer to a different club that will be competing and matches your ambition, then mate, this is the right time because you're going to be behind Vinicius Junior. You're going to be behind Mbappe. It's not going to be easy to displace any of those players in the lineup. So if you're satisfied into the playing on the opposite side, at right wing, which apparently isn't his favorite position, then it is what it is. But I feel like the wise decision would be to move on. But then you look at the market, who's there? I think Liverpool are the ones that need a left winger now. PSG have been a team that are interested in him, but they'll need to sell in order to accommodate his signing. So looks like he doesn't have too many options. So if I was to make a prediction, I think he stays at Real Madrid for another season. That's just my guess. But we'll soon find out very, very soon. Man says, okay, Ozzy, I understand why Diaz left. What percentage out of 100 give will you give on Isak joining us? Oof. Right now, I'm giving it 80% because I feel like we're in a strong position, but the 20% is basically Newcastle trying to play hardball with us. And once we can, you know, put that to one side and speak seriously where they're not trying to be coy about doing any business, then I feel like Liverpool will get the job done because the player is, has shown his sort of stance right now where he wants to leave. He doesn't want to stay at the club. He's unsettled there, doesn't want to sign a new contract. So therefore, the best thing would be to let the player leave because obviously he's not happy and he's not going to be a positive person in the squad and let another club, take him on board that he wants to join, that he has a desire to joining, and that is Liverpool. So that's why I'm going to say 80%, but hopefully we'll get some more developments and those percentages increases as the day goes on. Raz, big up Raz. He says, if we sign Isak, what would be your front three with the best chemistry and who would you bench? Thanks. Big up Raz for your comment and question there. Good question. Currently, I would have Isak up top. Goes without saying, I guess. Uh, I would have Ekitike on the left side as an inside forward, not as an out-and-out left winger. I think we'll play slightly different, and I think Kirkis will have to be more of an overlapping fullback rather than underlapping, which I know is his preference, but I think he'll need to be overlapping more so than not, and I'd go for Salah on that right-hand side. So that would be my front three, and then you've got the likes of Gakpo in the background. Um, Chiesa's future still, up in the air, so we don't know if he's going to be Liverpool, but currently, he would be a backup. And then also you've got Harvey Elliott as well. So for me, that is sufficient strength in depth for those roles. So yeah, that would be my lineup. So let's see, if that happens. And then ideal, do you want a sort of natural left winger? I think the perfect profile would have been Fofana because he was linked as Chiesa's replacement. So if Chiesa was to leave, then we would have got Fofana, and Fofana is a player that predominantly plays in the left wing, but can also play in the right wing, and he's a different profile to what we have in the squad. He's very quick, very dynamic on the flanks, and likes to attack behind to the opposition's defense. So that would have been the right profile. And unfortunately, looks like Fofana will be joining Everton very soon. But that would be, if Chiesa or Elliott were to leave, then I'd say we have to sign another attacker. So we get Nketiah, we get Isak, but then we actually sign a left wing as well. Whether that could be a Rodrigo, I don't know. Um, we're hearing that the finances are there, so we can make that move. Whether we do or not, only time will tell. But definitely some big talking points for us in the next few weeks. SSB20 says, hello, Bill. So SSB28, hope you're well. He says, once a player who is a big name has his eyes set on one particular club, it's usually done and dusted. Totally agree with you. That's why I get that strong feeling that we will sign Isak. And SSB28 says, yesterday's game, despite the result, I think there were a lot of positives and where players could play. I agree. The first half was really, really good to watch because we were very aggressive in the opening 10 minutes, which wasn't our way of playing last season. We were quite slow and, you know, I'd say we were like not slow in that way, but I feel like we were very sort of analytical of how the opposition is going to play against us. And after that 10 minutes, that's when we start, making our strides and then going from there. So it was good to see we're a bit more aggressive. And, the goals that to the supposed last finish was unbelievable. Honestly, what a finish that was. And I feel like we performed really well in the first half. Of course, it's a friendly, so we shouldn't be dwelling too much on the result. For me, it's more about the performance. And the second half, it ended up being a completely makeshift starting 11. So you can see the dynamic wasn't there because there's new players being embedded with other players that are senior or in the from the youth rankings as well. So that's why it's a bit where we didn't really have that flow that we had earlier in the first half. But I thought it was a good outing for us, and hopefully the players can learn from it going forward. Ross says, if we was to sign a left winger, who would suit us the best out of Gordon, Fofana, and Rodrigo? I think it's a tricky question for him because stylistically, it might actually be Gordon. And I don't even know why I'm saying that out loud, but I'm being honest because the left winger that I would want if Liverpool were to sign a left winger, it has to be someone that is different to others, where they attack behind the defenders. Rodrigo is a type of player where his ball to feet. He's very technical, but of course, he can take on a fullback, but he's not going to outpace the fullback. So I feel like we need that type of player who's going to present raw speed and attack from behind. Um, in this scenario, it would be Gordon and Fofana. So unfortunately, that rules out Rodrigo in this situation. Uh, the player that I want is Barcola. I know you've not listed him there, but that's the one that I want because I feel like the quality is there, but the profile is there as well in terms of him being a dynamic winger that can go past fullbacks, left wing or right wing. So that's the profile that I would want Liverpool to sign. I do like Rodrigo. I don't rate him the highest to some fans. I think some fans already put him in that world class category. I don't think he's there yet. He could be in the future, but not for me. I think he needs to leave Real Madrid in order to achieve that kind of status, which sounds crazy because, of course, Real Madrid are one of the best clubs in the world, but he's not getting game time there. So unless Vinicius Junior leaves the Real Madrid and then he's promoted as the first choice left winger, then the fortune will change for Rodrigo. But In that scenario, I'd go for Fofana. I think stylistically it would be Gordon because of his pace and his experience. I guess would play a part, but I'm not his biggest fan. I don't think he has the best output. I don't think he has the best in product either. So for me, it'd be Fofana, but then I feel like I'm downplaying how good Rodrigo is. If we had Isak, Ekitike in our team, and then we had Salah and Elliott, and we had Gakpo, and we had one more winger that comes in, then I feel like Rodrigo would be the best signing in terms of name and profile. But in terms of what the team wants, I would want someone that's a little bit different to Gakpo. And for me, is a different option from the bench because I wouldn't see them as a starter in terms of Fofana. I see them a player more, in the squad where they're challenging for that role. So let's see. By that scenario, I'd probably go for Fofana, and I know a lot of people won't agree with that, but I'm looking at profile rather than names, if I'm being honest with you. SSB20 says, start the season, Gakpo left wing, Isak number 9, and Salah on right wing. Don't force something yet. Slowly integrate Ekatike and Havertz playing under the front three. I think I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense. Um, if we get the profiles that we want, look, for example, if Chiesa leaves, then we need to replace him directly. So if it ends up being a player of a profile like Fofana, then you kind of have everything covered. So that's why I feel like that's very important in terms of what we do. Um, but yeah, I think Ekitike, he'll play up top and he'll play left wing. It won't just be my left winger all day long. He's going to interchange and play both roles. So he's going to have a big part for us next season. Um, SSB28 says also suppose that has the right back who cuts into six is a legit option. He just needs to learn to stay disciplined in that position. I was impressed by him. I was, but I don't like that right back sort of transition role. I feel like in a double pivot, it works because he has more time on the ball and he can spray passes around. But for me, I feel like midfield or a bit more further up in advanced position suits him to the T. In terms of right back, I don't like that position for him, to be honest. I feel like he's got more to his game than becoming a right back or playing a right back. But that's just my opinion there. Roger Bentley says, if you was the opposition team, who would scare you more, Prime Diaz or Isak? Because we are getting the Diaz money to get Isak. Both players play different roles. So Diaz is a left winger, of course, and Isak is a striker. Um, for me, it would be Isak, because right now what we're seeing with Isak, that is the prime Isak. But I still feel like he can do better. Prime Diaz in a Liverpool shirt, he's done well, but I feel like Isak gives you more of a fear factor. If we're talking Colombian Diaz, then it's a bit more closer because he plays like a different player when he's over there. But I would still go with Isak. I just feel like he's the one right now. He's one of the best strikers in world football. That's highly I rate him. So I think it's Isak for me. SSB28 says Rio reminds me of a young Sterling. Big up to Ozden Kabak. He made that comparison on our watch along yesterday as well. And I see the connection there as well because with Rio, he's very dynamic, very quick, and Sterling was the same as well when we signed him from QPR. The difference between Sterling and Rio at that sort of age range where, Sterling was 16, 17 years of age, I think Sterling had better sort of understanding of the game. I feel like he was very sort of like active when it came to understanding tactical instructions and all that sort of stuff. I feel like with Rio, he's still learning his trade. End product in terms of decision making needs to improve, but that only gets better when you play more football. So whether that's at the under 23s or cup games for the first team, I think that's what's going to help his development. So I don't feel like we should rush that process and get him over to the first team because he's showing so much promise. I don't think he's quite ready to make that jump now. In months and in due course he will. But I don't want to put too much pressure on the young kid. I feel like it could really impact his development, and it has happened over the years where you've got a young player come through, and then you've made him play a few first team games, and once they have an average or poor performance, it really affects their confidence, and sometimes it derails their career a little bit, where they can't really live up to the potential anymore. So I don't want that to happen for real because I feel like he's, got a huge promise, and I'm saying huge promise where he could be one of the best players or best wingers for years to come. He's got that kind of potential, but at the same time, he's in safe hands. We're Liverpool Football Club. We've got great coaches in Arne Slot. So if they feel like he's ready, who am I to argue? But from what I see, I think it's a little bit too early. Let him evolve, let him play for the under 23s, and in the second half of this season coming up, that's when we can integrate him to the first team a bit more. So that would be the way I would transition him slowly into the first team, and then 2026/2027 season is the time where he breaks through. So that would be my prediction. So plain Mystic odds there. Uh, SS8 SSB28 says Rodrigo doesn't have the engine for me. He doesn't do one outstanding special thing. Everything is just above average, but not world class. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, to be honest with you. Um, Liam Edwards, Big O says, who do you think Chiesa? What do you think Chiesa is valued at? I think, well, Italian teams don't tend to spend too much money in the transfer market. I think he's probably valued at around 15 million from the club. So I think the club will say 20 million, publicly, but I think they will be happy to take 15 million. So just a slight profit on what we paid. So we paid 10 plus 2.5 for him, so which accumulates to 12.5, and probably winning the league was within those clauses. Um, so for me, at least 15. It has to be at least 15 million. And let's see what we do. Do we find a direct replacement, or do we just, continue and go forward? It's going to be interesting because I don't feel like we can sell both Elliot and Chiesa. I feel like one of them has to stay. If both of them leave, we don't have that many backup attackers. We're very, very low in numbers there. So we'll have to do some work. We'll have to sign more attackers, which sounds crazy, but it'll have to be the case. So let's see what happens. Man says, Ozzy, do you think Rio Nguemo is ready to play left wing, or does he need more experience? Because I think he needs to improve his passing. I think he needs more experience, and I think one of the areas he needs to improve on is his decision making in the final third. So what you're sort of regarding to in terms of passing, that's probably in the same shape because in the couple of friendlies that we watch, there's times where he's made great runs, he's outpaced the fullback, and he needs to cut back a pass, but he doesn't find his man, or he goes for another sort of skill and then overplays it slightly. That's the decision-making process where he needs to know when to pass and when to release the ball, or when to keep on going and take on the fullback or the player in front of him. So that comes with experience. That's not something you can teach. In terms of what he has unbelievable talent. So that comes with experience. That comes with playing regular football. And rather than him being loaned out to a championship team right now, I think let him learn his sort of stripes within Liverpool before the under 23s, and let's see what happens next season. Maybe a loan move could be on the cards. I feel like he has such amazing talent that he could probably challenge for the left wing role, in the following season. So not quite ready yet, but we'll be in and around the team this season for sure. SSB28 says, I think by the athletic games on Monday, we will have our 11 ready. Yeah, that's that would be a good indication to know who's playing. Uh, Diaz knee injury lost his explosiveness. Yeah, definitely when he joined, he was very explosive, and it did impact his game a little bit. But I feel like last season he definitely adapted, to what capability he had, and I feel like he did it to his best. So yeah, bit of a shame that he's leaving, but still produced good performance for us, in my opinion. SSB20 says, the one whom I'm a bit concerned about is Frimpong. I feel he might struggle with physicality. I think he'll be all right. There were a couple of challenges in the Milan game that he didn't get his way, but I feel like his explosiveness is what's going to cause havoc to the opposition. So that's what I'm looking forward to in watching Frimpong next year. Raz says, who would you start at right back? Connor or Jeremy? And at left back, would you play Milos or Andy? So I would go for the new signings. I'd go for Milos Kerkez and Jeremy Frimpong. Not because they're the new shiny toys at the club or anything like that. I think um, they're the ones that will be the benchmark in terms of how we want to play. But the beauty is that we've got Conor Bradley, who's fantastic at right back, and then Andy Robertson. For me, of course, showed decent games, but also had some really poor games for us last season. But I think that's just down to you know playing so much football over the years, where it's going to have a toll on his body at some point. But I feel like with next season, because we've got a young and up and coming fullback in Milos Kerkez, they'll be able to rotate more. And I think with the rotation, it will make more sense for that to work. And it allows Robertson to save his energy and play his best football whenever called upon. And I think he'll be called upon playing against the stronger opposition. So I feel like the rotational role will actually suit Robertson, where he's not going to be overly worked or overly used. And I feel like whenever he will play, he will definitely show a good account of himself. So it could work. And plus, with his leadership skills and experience, is going to be vital in terms of how we play as a collective, but also from a squad point of view. He's going to be there to motivate and encourage players. So he'll be a very valuable member of our squad. Ryan said we've sold Diaz. If we sell Nunes, Elliot, and Keita as expected, who else apart from Isak do we still bring in? So if we sell Elliot and Keita, it has to be Isak and one more at least. Some will probably say, like for like, if three players go, three players come in. Or in this scenario, it's four players that are leaving in terms of Diaz, Nunes, Elliot, and Keita. I think we'll probably sign. On paper, I think Ekitike is a Nunes replacement, or should I say Diaz replacement, and I guess Nunes will be replaced by Isak. And I think they'll sign one more attacker to cover for Elliot and Chiesa combined. I don't think it'll be, you know, per every player won't be replaced. So I think Isak and one more. That's what I'm predicting. Ideally, I'd want three altogether, but I think with Isak and one more. SB20 said the ref was awful yesterday. Yeah, he was. He was awful. He really was. I don't think he knew some of the rules of football. That's how it felt like at times. But yeah, really, really poor officiating there. SSB20 says play Kirkhead and Bradley for me. I'm not mad at that. I really like Frimpong, and I feel like his raw speed is going to catch everyone by surprise. And I feel like his crossing is very good as well. I think that's going to help. That's going to be another asset or another weaponry to our team. So for me, it's a great addition to the squad. And also, Frimpong can play right wing. So there will be games where Bradley's at right back and he's at right wing. So it's important that they are supporting each other and play to a good standard, because it will actually help both of their developments going forward. Yeah. SSB28 says this might sound crazy, but I don't think Slot rates Trent with the way he uses fullbacks. You might have a point, and I'm not just saying it because of hindsight. And, he's no longer a Liverpool player. But the first thing when he walked through the doors, make sure he understood how to defend one on one. So that was a clear indication that he didn't rate his defending. Um, and it may came across that Trent was a bit of a luxury player for us, because we gave him the license to do what he wanted. At right back, he was all over the pitch. He was in the middle of the park sometimes. He was close to the edge of the box at times. Like, he just had a free roaming role within the team. And I think that impacted us, because I didn't like the fact that he'd go inside and Konate is covering two positions and Szoboszlai is dropping deep, covering for him. Like, you're losing elements of Szoboszlai and Konate's game by doing that. So next season, a right back will play right back and a left back will play left back. That's how it should be. And I'm looking forward to seeing that, because I feel like we did try and accommodate some of Trent's sort of, you know, frailties in his game, where, he wasn't very strong in certain aspects of his defending, and that's not how it should be. So yeah, he's moved on. I'm pretty sure he's regretting the move now, because Liverpool are on the up. But it's not my problem and not my concern anymore in regards to Trent. Ross said Sabozza is so important for our team, but who do we take out from the middle? I think we should play uh, S- Groundberg, Szoboszlai, and Wirtz. So that means you're dropping McAllister. I don't know about that. Look, for me, we have to think of the long game. And when we do these kind of predicted lineups and stuff, um, never take it for gospel because I feel like you're right at team based off the talent and the quality of certain players. But I feel like suppose that he's one of those players where he will be involved in some shape or form, and he will play a lot of games. He will start a lot of games, and it'll just depend on how we're setting up against certain opposition. So for me, Szoboszlai is a very important member of the squad. There's some parts of our fan base that don't rate him or don't respect him enough, in my opinion. Um, I've been a strong supporter of Szoboszlai before he became a Liverpool player, a player that I really liked, and over the moon when he joined Liverpool. So I've still got his support. I still feel like there's a fantastic player there. The goal he scored against AC Milan, I was obviously clapping and happy for him. But I know he's got that in his locker. He's got that capability and should be doing it more regularly. That's the only area of his game I feel like he needs to work on is be brave. Don't be afraid to shoot because you have it in your locker. You can score from distance, so you have to do it more so than not. So hopefully we'll get that version of Sabozda where he's a bit more free spirit and then able to shoot whenever he feels like he's able to score goals. So for me, exciting times with regards to Sabozda. And I feel like Sabozda and Verts would be a great combination on the pitch. I think they'll work together as well. So yeah, you can't rule it out. He will definitely be in the first team mix for sure. SSB28 says Groundback passing range was impressive yesterday. I remember that one pass he did where he switched it over to the left hand side. Beautiful pass. Oh, so there was one ball where he got it turned and switched it over to Frimpong where he took one touch. And yeah, so that was the Frimpong. I feel like there's one on the left wing. I think it might have been Rio and Gamal at the time who controlled it. Fantastic pass. And I was at centre back as well. So yeah, he was very impressive. Definitely showcased his passing range yesterday. SSB28 said Liverpool kind of did a diamond yesterday as well. Slot can do this and have Frimpong Kirkers down the wings. So before we had signed um Ekitike, I've kind of been very strong in terms of the formation I want us to play. I would like us to play the 4-4-2 diamond. I feel like it really suits us. Um, it allows Mohamed Salah to play a bit more centrally. He would be one of the strikers. So alongside an Isak, and then you have Gakpo and Ekitike as your backup strikers there. So that makes good sense for me as well. Then you have Florian Wirtz with Szoboszlai as his backup on paper, of course. And then you've got Groundberg, McAllister, and then who else would you have? Even Szoboszlai actually could be in that team as well. So in that way, you've got the perfect balance. Groundberg, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Wirtz, and then you've got Salah and Ekitike up top. For me, that team fits the bill. And that's what I'm thinking as well. If that is Slot's idea, then maybe we don't need to sign a left winger because I mentioned this a few days ago actually. Diaz is the only player in our team, in my eyes, that is a true out and out winger. Gakpo is a winger, but he can also play as an inside forward and is actually better when he cuts in a bit more. Salah at this stage of his career, is probably more suited playing more infield than being an out-and-out winger because he doesn't have that raw speed anymore. He's quick, don't get me wrong, but his game is not to be on the byline and outmaneuver the fullback. It's more so to come in to the danger zone and try and be effective at that part of the pitch. So 4-4-2 diamond, I feel like could work, and I feel like we have the squad, we have the players to do that as well. So for me, that's the position, that's the formation that I would like us to play next season. But we all know Arne Slot, we don't just play one formation. We'll play different variations, and that's why I'm so impressed in terms of the squad that he's building right now because we've got players that are multifunctional. They can play in different shapes and different systems, and we're going to be effective all the way around. So exciting prospect for us Liverpool fans next season. And Raz says, I like McAllister. He's very technically gifted, but we need to both that running power against teams like Arsenal. Yes, I think it will just depend on the opposition. If we need a 4-4-2 diamond, then they can both play. So it just depends, how the team is set up. But it's a good headache to have for the coach. And I also believe, we will playing different systems against different teams. So both line will definitely be part of that mix. I am very, very confident of that. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Very late in the UK right now, past 2 a.m. So appreciate everyone watching the show. And wherever in the world, thank you so much for your engagement. Just got one more comment there before we move on. Ras said the reason we won the Premier League with 99 points is because we had two pressing machines in midfield, Endo, Gini, and Milner. They suffocating teams. Yeah, that's true. But we're playing slot ball right now, different dynamics, different way of playing. We're not playing heavy metal football. We're playing a bit more calm, a bit more composed, measured football. So different game, different sort of dynamics. But yeah, I see your point there. I feel like we're just playing in a different way. We've evolved from that sort of football, and we're trying to be a bit more of a complete team now. So for me, it's an exciting prospect for next season. Bo says, "Hello, my man. Big up yourself, Bo. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your comment there." And yes, that is it for today, guys. Shout out to everyone involved. So a lot of new names as well. So appreciate you in getting involved and sending your comments. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video. So shout out to Muslim Kabak as always. Shout out to Fahim. Shout out to Brazy. Shout out to Drunk Vigo. Shout out to Steel Mania. Shout out to Asim from Born and Red. Big up yourself. Shout out to Kieran. Big up Kieran as always. Shout out to Mazzy. Shout out to Ratchet Painting. Shout out to Raz. Shout out to SSB28. Shout out to Liam Edwards. Shout out to who else do we have? Shout out to Bowl as well. If I missed your apologies. Big up to yourselves for tuning in. Now, in terms of upcoming shows, I'm sure we'll get some development tomorrow. So definitely we'll do another transfer show around 11 p.m. UK time. So today felt a bit more impromptu because there's a lot of breaking news, and I thought, it might be too late to do a show, but I thought, you know what, let me just do it. Got a lot to say. So I appreciate everyone, staying up and, sticking along and watching as we discuss all these sort of breaking news and, latest developments happening with certain players and outgoing players. So yeah, appreciate your time as always, guys. Just got one more comment and we'll close the show. Raz says, one last question. Who would you be your starting lineup for next season? So of course, to be in a formation, but I'm going to stick to 4-2-3-1 because it's what we're accustomed to seeing last year. So I'm going to go with Allison in goal, Kirkes, Van Dijk, Konate, and Frimpong as my back four. Gravenberch and McAllister in a double pivot. Then you've got Salah, Verts, and Gakpo, and dare I say Isak up top. But if we're saying current squad, then Ekitike up top. So that would be my starting lineup. But of course, if Isak's there, then I'd go for Isak up top. Um, and that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe. I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.